Headline from the Wall Street Journal: Trump shooting is Secret Service's most stunning failure in decades. True or false?
True. 100% true. I remember going through my own protective academy, and one of the first things that I remember hearing an instructor tell me was, anytime your protective team is forced to pivot from prevention to reaction, you failed. The buck stops with the Secret Service here, and the fact that they haven't been answering any questions is not really instilling a lot of confidence in their future capability.
It really is stunning. And you know, it's stunning when like an idiot like me sees stuff and is like, hey, wait a minute, what about that? Let me start with this because, you know, as I look at it, I don't understand all this stuff. You've been protecting, you know, really important people all around the globe for a really long time. Also, lowlifes like Glenn Beck. But when you're talking about a situation like this with a presidential candidate who's obviously, you know, getting threatened all the time, is in the middle of an open field with an elevated position 130 yards away or whatever it was, to me, it just seems, number one, completely insane that there wasn't an officer or somebody on that roof preventing anyone else from getting up there. I mean, am I overthinking this?
No, you're not overthinking this at all. I mean, 150 yards away, 200 yards away, 300 yards away, 500 yards away, that's still within the threat envelope. Anyone who's ever gone through any kind of like protective academy, whether that's Secret Service, DSS, U.S. Marshals, what have you, day one, year one, hour one is threat mitigation, right? Line of sight. And the fact that this shooter was only a football field away from a presidential candidate is absurd. And they can say all day long that this was outside the perimeter and that this was local police's responsibility. The buck stops with the Secret Service. The buck stops with Secret Service. So that canopy should have been flagged. It should have been marked. It should have been deterred. It should have been completely on everyone's radar. And the fact that someone was able to drive in, carry a long run across a field, mount a roof, and then set up into a sniper perch is just unforgivable.
It's incomprehensible that happened. And, you know, it's one of the reasons why there's so many crazy conspiracy theories going around immediately is because people jump to conclusions because they can't understand how this could happen. They picture the Secret Service as being the best in the world. And I mean, how do you explain that to someone who's looking at this and saying, wait a minute, these guys are supposed to be top of the line and the best security anybody can get, and yet this obvious thing that I think the layman could understand, there's people just standing around saying, hey, there's somebody on the roof with a gun a minute and a half before the shooting happens, and somehow it still goes on. I mean, how do we explain this?
Yeah, so what my sources are telling me and what the agents who I have personal relationships with are saying to me is that this is not the fault of the agents on the ground. This is the fault of many echelons higher. That the Secret Service agents on the ground are overtasked, are overworked. They're not getting the assets they need. When, you know, listen, the Secret Service has the capability to protect anyone anywhere with almost like 100-degree amount of certainty. What it then comes down to is how much resources and money are we going to invest into each one of these events, right? So I think what you saw was a lot of local and state police support being given to this event because so many Secret Service agents are in Milwaukee right now or are also in Chicago. It was very concerning to me to learn that the site survey was only done a day before when these are typically done weeks before, which means that the Secret Service agents, the detail lead for that site, was probably doing his walkthrough during the load-in, which gives him no time to course correct or, hey, this isn't good, or, hey, what do we have here, or what assets do I have available? And the fact that it was local police responsible for that outside or for that farmhouse that was outside the perimeter, great, but then you also need to inspect what you expect. What is the communication plan? Does that outside local police department have the ability to communicate directly with the Secret Service team, or do they have to go through multiple levels of communication before a decision can be finally made? And then, most upsetting, as CNN was reporting this morning, apparently the officers were alerted to that gunman on the roof, saw him. The gunman turned and aimed at that officer, and instead of the officer engaging that suspect, ducked and covered and protected himself instead.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, I'm not sure what to make of that yet. Just because, I've heard different reports. One report I heard that he kind of just ducked. Another one I heard is when he saw the gun, he fell off the ladder, which might be a little bit. And it was only a few seconds, I guess, until the shots went out. It feels though like there's some effort to just blame the local police officers. And look, they might be at fault here. It's certainly possible, but you're tasking them with an awful lot. And I don't know.
Right.
I feel like there might be a little bit of a blame game going on. You think that's possible?
There's 100% a blame game. And the bottom line is that the buck stops with the Secret Service.
Yeah.
You can say, hey, I have attached an asset here. But if you are not giving them back briefs, giving them task conditions and standards, letting them know exactly what it is that they're supposed to be doing when they're there, then it's no different than having like those guys with the yellow jackets at stadiums that are watching the game versus watching the crowd.
Right. Which never makes any sense to me.
No.
Thinking of, I saw the Biden speech last night, and I knew I wasn't going to like it. I'm not a Biden fan, but what I would have liked to have at least seen was something concrete. Hey, we're doubling protection. We're doubling the resources for all Trump events. We're going to start protecting RFK Jr., for example, with Secret Service protection. Right. We got none of that. I mean, what are the concrete steps that could actually happen that would protect Trump and all these other candidates?
To adhere to the actual standard that is already in place. One of the problems that we're running into is that they just don't have the assets available to them to do what they need to do in order to ensure the certainty for everyone involved. So what starts happening is we start chipping away at, okay, you're not going to have a 1 week advance, you're going to have 1 day. You're not going to have 100 agents, you're going to have 10. You're not going to have 5, you're not going to have a counter assault team, we're going to give you a local SWAT team to back up your play. And so what you start doing is the Secret Service is this really great vintage wine. But then you start adding water to it with all this delineation and all this spreading out of assets that they don't really have the capability to do. I bet if you like went down and like audited each agent was on that detail that day and asked them the last time they got like a full 12 hours off, it would be a long time for almost all of them.
Fascinating. And can you give me, a lot has been made about these videos as you see Trump kind of going from the podium over to the vehicle for him to exit. There's some people who kind of seem like they don't know where they're going. They're not holstering their weapons properly. Like, what do you make of that? Is that real?
Yeah, that's a real concern. I thought the Secret Service agents on the ground that day did a very good job of covering the president once the threat was realized. What I had a real concern with was the discombobulation and the miscommunication. You hear agents saying, on you, okay, up and let's go. There's something in the protective world that's known as ambush relief syndrome, which is when let's say you're clearing a room and you take down one guy and you kind of let your guard down because you think you neutralize the threat. You kind of leave yourself vulnerable for follow-on attacks. And so the fact that they were kind of like very whimsical in letting President Trump kind of stand up and get his shoes and then give the fight sign, and then they kind of like walk him down to the car, and then they put him in the car on the passenger side instead of using the vehicle itself as cover. Like, why wasn't that SUV like backed right up to the stage to add another element of protection? And I think this is one of those things where it's really easy to train in ideal situations and under ideal scenarios. It's something else entirely to do it under duress. And if you are not trained and capable to act under duress as you are when you're not under duress, then what you see is what we got.
That's a great breakdown of all this. Spencer Courson, you've been doing this for years, threat management expert, founder of the Courson Security Group, and author of The Safety Trap, how you can apply a lot of the stuff that Spencer was talking about to your actual everyday life. It's a great book. You should definitely get it. Spencer, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.